The late evening shift on Earth's orbital defense station was usually quiet, but tonight was different. The station's admiral couldn't take her eyes off the massive display screen showing the approaching alien fleet. Her hands gripped the railing of the observation deck so tightly her knuckles turned white. 23 years of military service hadn't prepared her for this moment. Below the station, Earth glowed like a blue marble in space, its cities twinkling like scattered diamonds. The sight that had once filled her with peace now only reminded her of how much they had to lose. Billions of lives, thousands of years of human history, all of it hanging in the balance. "Admiral," a voice called from behind her. "The Schrödinger is ready for deployment." She turned to face the young lieutenant, noting the mix of fear and excitement in his eyes. They all felt it, that peculiar combination of terror and hope. The experimental battleship represented humanity's greatest technological achievement and quite possibly their last chance for survival. The Schrödinger wasn't like any other ship ever built. Its quantum state hull seemed to flicker in and out of existence as she watched it through the station's viewport. One moment it appeared solid as steel, the next it was barely more than a ghost, like trying to spot a clear glass marble in a swimming pool. The engineering team had explained the science behind it countless times, but it still felt like magic to most of the crew. "Status report," she ordered, walking briskly to the command center. The bridge crew worked with focused intensity, their fingers dancing across holographic displays as they monitored the approaching threat. "The Vexar fleet will reach our outer defense perimeter in 47 minutes, reported the tactical officer, his voice steady despite the pressure. Long-range scans confirmed 12 capital ships, each roughly 3 times the size of our largest conventional battleship. The admiral nodded, studying the tactical display. The alien vessels looked almost organic, like massive sea creatures swimming through space. Their biomechanical technology was leagues ahead of anything humanity had developed, except for the Schrödinger. "What's the status of the quantum drive?" she asked, turning to the chief engineer's station. The chief engineer looked up from his console, dark circles under his eyes testament to the countless sleepless nights spent perfecting the revolutionary technology. "The quantum field is stable, Admiral. All systems are operating within expected parameters. We've never tested it against actual alien technology, but the simulations show a success rate of 78%. The Admiral allowed herself a small smile. "Better odds than we usually get." She opened a channel to the Schrödinger's bridge. "Bridge, this is command. What's your status?" The ship's captain responded immediately, her voice clear and determined. "All systems go, command. Crew is ready. Quantum protocols are initialized. We're ready to show these aliens something they've never seen before." Around the command center, screens displayed the Schrödinger's unique capabilities. The quantum drive didn't just power the ship, it fundamentally altered its relationship with reality. The battleship could exist in multiple states simultaneously, making it nearly impossible to target. It was humanity's answer to the overwhelming technological superiority of the Vexar fleet. As the minutes ticked by, the Admiral thought about everything that had led to this moment. The first detected signals from the alien fleet 6 months ago. The terrifying realization that they were dealing with a species that had conquered thousands of worlds. The race against time to complete the Schrödinger project before the Vexar arrived. Now, as she watched the distance between humanity and extinction shrink with each passing second, she knew they had run out of time for doubts. Either the Schrödinger would work or Earth would fall. She straightened her uniform and took a deep breath. "All stations, battle positions," she commanded. "Let's show them what happens when you threaten our home." Deep within the heart of the Schrödinger, the chief engineer moved through the ship's quantum core with practiced precision. His weathered hands traced the glowing circuits that pulsed with an otherworldly blue light. 20 years of his life had gone into this moment, and he couldn't help but remember all the failed attempts, the sleepless nights, and the colleagues who said it couldn't be done. The quantum drive hummed with a sound unlike anything ever heard on a human vessel before, not the usual deep rumble of conventional engines, but a strange, almost musical tone that seemed to exist just at the edge of hearing. It was the sound of reality itself being gently bent, like a guitar string being tuned to a perfect note. "Core stability at 97%, called out his assistant, her voice carrying over the gentle hum. She'd been with the project since the beginning, back when they were still working out of an underground lab in the Himalayas. Quantum field harmonics are holding steady. The chief engineer nodded, his eyes fixed on the holographic readouts floating in the air around him. Each display showed a different aspect of the impossible technology they'd created. Some showed the ship as it appeared in different quantum states. In one it was perfectly solid, in another almost transparent, and in others it seemed to occupy several positions at once. "Do you remember the first test?" he asked, allowing himself a brief moment of nostalgia even as they prepared for battle. "When we managed to make that pencil exist in two places at once." His assistant laughed, the sound echoing off the core's curved walls. "And then we lost it in 15 different dimensions. Took us 3 weeks to figure out how to bring it back." Their moment of shared memory was interrupted by a warning light pulsing on one of the displays. The chief engineer moved quickly to the control panel, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. A section of the quantum field was showing slight instability, nothing dangerous, but it needed to be perfect. "Hand me the quantum synchronizer," he called out, and his assistant quickly passed him a tool that looked like a cross between a medical scanner and a television remote. He pointed it at the affected area, making tiny adjustments until the warning light faded away. Through the core's observation window, he could see the rest of the engineering team working with focused intensity. Each of them knew their role perfectly. They had to. When you were working with technology that could literally tear holes in reality, there was no room for mistakes. The intercom crackled to life with a message from the bridge. "Engineering, we're detecting the alien fleet's advanced scouts. Time to show them what this ship can do. Are we ready down there?" The chief engineer took a deep breath, looking around at his team. He saw determination in their eyes, mixed with the same nervous excitement he felt in his own chest. This wasn't just about proving their technology worked anymore. This was about protecting their home. "Running final diagnostics now," he responded, his fingers moving across 3 different control panels simultaneously. The quantum core's hum increased slightly in pitch as he initiated the test sequence. "Quantum field integrity at 100%. Probability matrices are stable. Position uncertainty is optimal." He watched as the diagnostic programs ran through their final checks. Each green light that appeared on his screen represented years of research, countless failed attempts, and breakthroughs that had rewritten the physics textbooks. The Schrödinger wasn't just a ship, it was humanity's greatest achievement, the perfect fusion of theoretical physics and practical engineering. "All systems are go," he reported to the bridge, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "The quantum drive is ready for combat operations. Whatever these aliens throw at us, we'll show them something they've never seen before." As the ship moved into position for its first real battle, the chief engineer thought about all the people who had called their project impossible. He thought about every scientist who said you couldn't manipulate quantum states on this scale, every official who wanted to cut their funding, every skeptic who claimed it was all just science fiction. In a few minutes, they would prove them all wrong, and hopefully save humanity in the process. The entire command center fell silent as the Vexar fleet emerged from hyperspace. Everyone had seen the simulations and studied the long-range scans, but nothing had prepared them for the real thing. Their ships were massive beyond comprehension, looking like giant sea creatures made of living metal, their surfaces rippling with patterns of bioluminescent light. "Holy," whispered someone on the bridge, voicing what everyone was thinking. The smallest of the alien vessels was bigger than anything humanity had ever built, and the largest, well, it made Earth's biggest space station look like a toy in comparison. The tactical officer's hands trembled slightly as he read the incoming data. 12 capital ships confirmed, sir. They're arranging themselves in attack formation. Energy readings are, they're off the charts. Our conventional shields wouldn't last 10 seconds against their weapons." On the main view screen, the alien ships moved with an impossible grace for their size, their formation creating a perfect geometric pattern. It was beautiful in a terrifying way, like watching a shark circle its prey. "They're broadcasting something," announced the communications officer, her fingers flying across her console. I think it's a message. The translation matrix is processing it now." Moments later, a voice filled the command center. It wasn't human. The sounds were too deep, too resonant, with harmonics that made the deck plates vibrate. but the translation matrix converted it into words everyone could understand. "People of Earth," the alien voice boomed, "we are the Vexar Dominion. Your world has been chosen for ascension into our empire. Surrender now, and your species will be preserved as servants. Resist, and you will be erased. You have 10 of your minutes to respond." The Admiral stood from her command chair, her face set with determination. "Send them our response," she ordered, "just like we planned." The communications officer nodded and transmitted the message they had prepared. A simple set of coordinates, marking a point in space halfway between the two fleets. A clear invitation to battle. "They're receiving our transmission," the tactical officer reported. "Their fleet is. They're laughing, sir. Their communication channels are filled with what the translation matrix identifies as amusement." The Admiral allowed herself a small smile. Let them laugh. "They don't know what's coming." She opened a channel to the Schrödinger. "All hands, this is it. Remember your training. Remember what we're fighting for. Initiate quantum protocols on my mark." The response from the Vexar fleet was swift. 3 of their smaller ships broke formation, moving toward the coordinates with predatory grace. Their weapons charged, creating beautiful but deadly auroras around their hulls. "They're powering up their main guns," the tactical officer reported. "Energy readings suggest they're using enough firepower to crack a small moon. They're not taking any chances." The Admiral took a deep breath. "Good. Let them waste their energy. Schrödinger, you are clear to engage. Show them what humanity is capable of." The experimental battleship moved forward, its quantum hull already beginning to shift and blur. To the naked eye, it looked like the ship was fading in and out of reality, leaving afterimages like a camera taking multiple exposures of the same subject. The Vexar ships opened fire, their weapons releasing streams of plasma that should have vaporized any normal vessel. But the Schrödinger wasn't normal. The quantum field activated fully, and suddenly the ship existed in multiple states simultaneously. The alien weapons passed through empty space where the ship had been, or would be, or might be, but never where it actually was. Through the command center's windows, the crew watched as their single ship appeared to multiply, creating a cloud of probability that confused the alien targeting systems. The Vexar's second volley went wide, their perfect formation breaking as they tried to track a target that refused to obey the normal laws of physics. "Their tactical computers are trying to compensate," reported the science officer, excitement creeping into his voice. "But they can't predict where we'll be because we're literally everywhere and nowhere at once. The quantum field is working exactly as designed." For the first time in recorded history, the mighty Vexar fleet had missed their target, and judging by their frantic communications, they had no idea how to handle this impossible situation. The battle for Earth was about to begin in earnest, and humanity had just proved they weren't going down without a fight. The captain of the Schrödinger stood on her bridge, watching as reality itself seemed to bend around her ship. The quantum drive hummed through the deck plates, its vibrations unlike anything she felt in her 15 years of space service. Every crew member sat at their stations with perfect focus, knowing that one small mistake could spell disaster. "Quantum field holding steady at maximum power," reported her helmsman, fingers dancing across the holographic controls. "We're successfully existing in, well, according to these readings, about 300 different positions at once." Through the bridge's main viewport, space itself seemed to ripple and twist. The Vexar ships, massive and threatening as they were, appeared to be firing at ghosts. Their plasma torpedoes passed harmlessly through space where the Schrödinger might have been, but never actually was. "It's like trying to punch smoke," the tactical officer said with a grin, watching the aliens' frustrated attempts to target them. "Their targeting computers must be having a complete meltdown right now." The captain nodded, but kept her focus on the battle display. This was just the beginning, and she knew better than to underestimate an enemy that had conquered thousands of worlds. Begin attack pattern Delta. Let's show them what this ship can really do. The Schrödinger's quantum engines pulsed, and suddenly the ship wasn't just existing in multiple places, it was moving through them all at once. To the Vexar sensors, it must have looked like they were fighting hundreds of ships instead of just one. "Enemy fleet is adjusting their formation," called out the sensor officer. "They're spreading out, trying to create a net we can't slip through. But with our quantum state, well, their net has more holes than rope, if you get my meaning. The captain allowed herself a small smile at that. Years of being mocked for joining the Schrödinger project, of being told they were chasing impossible dreams, and now here they were, making humanity's greatest enemies look like children trying to catch raindrops with their hands. Ma'am. The tactical officer's voice cut through her thoughts. The Vexar ships are changing their weapon configuration. They're powering up something big. The main screen showed the alien vessels shifting, their biomechanical hulls morphing to create what looked like massive energy-focusing arrays. The space between their ships began to crackle with strange energies that made the quantum sensors scream in protest. They're trying to create a disruption field, the science officer reported, his voice tense. If they can destabilize local spacetime enough, they might be able to force us into a single quantum state. The captain's mind raced. This was the moment that would prove whether humanity's greatest achievement was enough to save them, or if they just delayed the inevitable. She had seconds to make a decision that could determine the fate of Earth itself. All power to the quantum drive, she ordered, her voice steady despite the pressure. Helm, plot a course directly through their formation. If they want to try to pin us down, let's give them something to chase. The crew looked at her with a mixture of surprise and determination. What she was suggesting was either brilliant or suicidal, possibly both. The helmsman's hands hesitated for just a moment over the controls. You heard the captain, the first officer barked. Let's show these aliens what happens when they corner humans. We either make history or become it. Either way, they'll remember this day. The Schrödinger's engines flared to life, pushing the quantum field to its absolute limits. On the tactical display, their single ship appeared to split into 1,000 possible versions of itself, each one taking a slightly different path toward the heart of the Vexar formation. The alien fleet's disruption field crackled and sparked, trying to catch them, to force them into normal space. But they couldn't disrupt all possibilities at once. The Schrödinger was everywhere and nowhere, a ghost ship dancing through the gaps in reality itself. Impact with their formation in 30 seconds, called out the helmsman. Whatever we're going to do, we better do it fast. The captain gripped her command chair, watching as they hurtled toward either victory or oblivion. Prepare all quantum weapons, she ordered. Let's show them why you should never back humans into a corner. The Vexar launched their attack with devastating force. Streams of plasma torpedoes lit up space like artificial comets, their energy signatures so powerful they made the Schrödinger's sensors flash warning signals across every screen on the bridge. Incoming fire, multiple vectors. The tactical officer shouted, but there was an edge of excitement in his voice. This was the moment they'd trained for, the true test of their quantum technology. The captain watched as the alien weapons approached. To everyone's amazement, the torpedoes passed harmlessly through space where the Schrödinger appeared to be. The ship's quantum state had already shifted, existing in a different probability until the threat had passed. The weapons officer couldn't contain his enthusiasm. It's like trying to hit a shadow with a flashlight. The more they try to light us up, the more we fade away. In the engine room, warning lights flashed as the quantum drive pushed itself to new limits. The chief engineer moved quickly between control stations, his experienced hands making minute adjustments to keep the field stable. The drive's running hot, he reported through the comm system. We're maintaining quantum state, but these rapid shifts are putting strain on the containment field. We've got maybe 10 minutes at this intensity. On the main screen, the Vexar ships launched another barrage. This time they tried a new strategy, firing in spreading patterns to cover all possible positions. The space around the Schrödinger lit up like a web of deadly light. They're learning, the first officer observed grimly. Each attack pattern is more complex than the last. They're trying to predict our probability shifts. The captain nodded, her mind racing through options. The Vexar were renowned across the galaxy for their tactical adaptability. They wouldn't stay confused for long. Signal Earth Command, she ordered. Tell them to ready the backup plan. If we can't hold them here. She left the sentence unfinished. Everyone knew what failure would mean. Suddenly, the ship shuddered. One of the plasma torpedoes had grazed their quantum field, causing a momentary fluctuation. Warning sirens blared across every deck. Quantum field stability at 87%. The engineering officer reported, his fingers flying across the controls. They got lucky with that last shot. A direct hit would have collapsed the field entirely. The captain made a quick decision. They couldn't stay on the defensive forever. Helm, bring us about. Tactical, prepare the quantum cascade weapon. If they want to play with probability, let's show them what that really means. The Schrödinger's experimental weapon system powered up, drawing energy directly from the quantum field itself. The ship's hull began to glow with an otherworldly light, existing in so many states at once that it looked like a constellation of stars had taken ship form. Quantum cascade charged and ready, reported the weapons officer. But ma'am, we've never fired this at full power before. The simulation showed it would work, the captain cut him off. And right now, we're out of options for playing it safe. Through the viewport, they could see the Vexar fleet regrouping, forming a new attack pattern. Their bioorganic ships pulsed with energy, preparing what looked like their own version of a final strike. All hands, brace for quantum cascade firing, the captain announced shipwide. Engineering, divert all available power to the weapon. Tactical, target their command ship. Let's show them why humans named our first quantum battleship after a famous paradox. The tension on the bridge was electric as the quantum cascade weapon powered up. Every crew member knew they were about to make history, one way or another. Quantum cascade at full power, reported the weapons officer. Ready to fire on your command. The captain took one last look at the massive alien fleet ahead of them. In all their centuries of conquest, the Vexar had never faced anything like what they were about to experience. Fire. The quantum cascade fired, and for a brief moment, reality itself seemed to hold its breath. The weapon didn't fire a beam or launch a missile. Instead, it released a wave of pure probability that rippled through space like a stone dropped in a cosmic pond. Impact in 3, 2, 1. The weapons officer counted down, his voice barely a whisper. When the cascade wave hit the Vexar command ship, something extraordinary happened. The massive alien vessel didn't explode or break apart. Instead, it began to exist in multiple states at once, just like the Schrödinger. But unlike humanity's carefully controlled quantum field, this was chaos. Their hull integrity is, well, it's everything from 100% to 0%, reported the science officer, staring at his readings in amazement. Their ship exists in all possible states simultaneously. They have no way to control it. Through the main viewport, the crew watched as the Vexar command ship seemed to flicker and shift, sometimes appearing solid, sometimes transparent, sometimes in multiple places at once. The alien crew's confusion was evident in their erratic movements and desperate transmissions. Their shields are trying to compensate, the tactical officer called out, excitement clear in his voice. But they can't adapt to something that breaks the laws of physics. It's like trying to use an umbrella in a rainstorm where the rain falls up, down, and sideways all at once. The captain leaned forward in her chair, watching intently as the aliens struggled with their new reality. Status of their weapon systems. Completely ineffective, ma'am, replied the tactical officer. They can't fire because their weapons exist in every possible state of fired and not fired. They've basically locked themselves in quantum uncertainty. In engineering, the chief engineer watched his displays with a mixture of pride and concern. The quantum cascade is stable, but we can't maintain this level of power for long. We need to press our advantage while we have it. The captain nodded, understanding the implied warning. Target their support ships. Let's show them what happens when you threaten our home. The Schrödinger's quantum weapons fired again, this time spreading the cascade effect to the surrounding alien vessels. One by one, the mighty ships of the Vexar fleet found themselves trapped in probability loops, their advanced technology working against them as they tried to compensate for something they'd never encountered before. Picking up massive energy fluctuations from their fleet, reported the sensor officer. Their bioorganic systems are trying to adapt, but they're just making it worse. It's like they're getting tangled in their own quantum states. On the communications channels, the Vexar's confident transmissions had turned to chaos. Their universal translators struggled to convert the panic in their voices as ship after ship lost control of its position in normal spacetime. They're losing formation, the first officer observed, pointing to the tactical display. Their fleet coordination is falling apart. They've never had to deal with an enemy they couldn't predict. The captain allowed herself a small smile. Humanity's greatest gamble was paying off. The quantum physics that had seemed like pure theory just years ago was now their strongest weapon. Send a message to their remaining command structure, she ordered. Tell them this is just a taste of what we can do. Earth is not some helpless planet they can add to their collection. The communications officer quickly composed and sent the message. The response came almost immediately, not in words, but in actions. The Vexar ships that could still control their drives were beginning to retreat. They're pulling back, announced the tactical officer, unable to keep the joy from his voice. The mighty Vexar fleet is actually retreating. Cheers erupted across the bridge, but the captain raised her hand for silence. Don't celebrate yet, she warned. Stay focused. This isn't over until they're out of our solar system. The crew quickly returned to their duties, but there was a new confidence in their movements. They had proven that humanity's quantum technology wasn't just a theory or a desperate gamble, it was a revolution in warfare that had just turned the tide against an enemy that had never known defeat. Back at Earth Command, the Admiral watched the tactical displays with growing amazement. The Vexar fleet's perfectly coordinated attack patterns were breaking down into chaos. Their ships, once moving with terrifying precision, now scattered like leaves in a storm. Are you seeing this? The tactical officer asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Their combat computers are completely overwhelmed. They can't predict where our shots will land because they can't predict where their own ships will be from one moment to the next. The main screen showed the Schrödinger continuing its attack, each quantum cascade creating ripples of probability that turned the aliens' superior technology against them. The Vexar ship's bioorganic hulls, designed to adapt to any threat, were now adapting themselves into impossible shapes and states. It's like watching a master chess player suddenly realize all their pieces can move in any direction at once, the strategic officer commented, shaking her head in wonder. All their experience, all their tactics, none of it prepared them for this. Emergency transmissions flooded the communication channels as the alien fleet struggled to maintain control. Their universal translators couldn't keep up with the panic in their voices, but the meaning was clear. For the first time in their history of conquest, the Vexar were facing something they couldn't understand or counter. Their tactical networks are collapsing, reported the communications officer. They're trying to coordinate their movements, but each ship exists in so many possible positions that they can't even form a proper battle line anymore. The Admiral stood at the command center's main window, watching the battle unfold with her own eyes. The space between Earth and the Moon had become a dance of quantum probability, with ships flickering in and out of existence like fireflies in a cosmic storm. Send word to all Earth defense stations, she ordered. Tell them to prepare for any desperate moves. A cornered enemy is often the most dangerous. As if to prove her point, 3 of the larger Vexar ships suddenly charged their main weapons. Their bioorganic hulls pulsed with energy, preparing what looked like a final massive attack. Energy readings off the scale, the sensor officer shouted. They're trying to overload their own quantum states. If they succeed, the explosion could devastate half the solar system. The Admiral's mind raced through options. The Schrödinger had proven its worth, but could it handle this new threat? She opened a channel to the experimental ship's bridge. Schrödinger, what's your status? Can your quantum field contain a multi-ship core breach? The chief engineer's voice came back steady despite the strain evident in it. The quantum cascade has them trapped in probability loops, ma'am. If they try to overload their cores, they'll just create an infinite number of possible explosions, none of which can actually happen in our reality. True to his words, the Vexar ship's attempt at a suicide attack fizzled into nothing. Their weapons, existing in every possible state at once, couldn't focus enough energy in any single reality to create the threatened explosion. The quantum physics professor at the academy would love this, the first officer said with a grim smile. The uncertainty principle just saved Earth from annihilation. Around the command center, displays showed more and more Vexar ships losing control of their position in space-time. Some flickered between different locations, others seemed to exist in multiple places at once, and a few appeared to be trying to exist in dimensions that human senses couldn't even detect. Their fleet commander is requesting communication, the communications officer announced suddenly. They're asking for terms. A heavy silence fell over the command center. Everyone present understood the historical significance of this moment. The Vexar, scourge of 1,000 worlds, were admitting defeat. The admiral straightened her uniform and nodded to the communications officer. "Put them through," she said. "Let's teach them about humanity's terms for those who threaten our world." On the Schrödinger's bridge, the crew watched in amazement as the once mighty Vexar fleet struggled to maintain basic formation. Their quantum weapons had turned the aliens' superior technology into a liability, leaving their ships trapped between multiple states of existence. Another one just lost containment, called out the tactical officer, pointing to a massive alien vessel that seemed to be fighting with its own shadow. That makes 7 of their capital ships completely neutralized. They can't even fire their weapons without the shots existing in every possible state at once. The captain stood at the main viewport, watching the battle with a mixture of pride and caution. Through the quantum-shifted space, she could see the Vexar flagship trying desperately to coordinate its remaining forces. Its bio-organic hull pulsed with frustrated energy, like a living thing trapped in a maze of its own making. "Their fleet commander is broadcasting again," the communications officer reported. "The translator is having trouble with some of it. Apparently, it's hard to maintain clear communications when you exist in multiple quantum states at once." The message, when it came through, was filled with something the Vexar had never shown before: uncertainty. Their usual demands for surrender had been replaced by confused questions about human technology and desperate attempts to understand what was happening to their ships. "They're asking how we've done this," the first officer said, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. "Seems they've never encountered anyone who could turn their own advanced technology against them." In engineering, the chief engineer monitored the quantum cascade's effects with growing confidence. "The probability field is holding steady," he reported through the comm system. "Their ships are getting more tangled in quantum uncertainty with every passing minute. It's like watching a cat chase its own tail, in about 1,000 different realities at once." The weapons officer couldn't help but grin as he watched his displays. "Their targeting systems are going crazy. Every time they try to lock onto us, we're simultaneously in every possible position within a 1,000-kilometer sphere. They literally can't tell where to shoot." Suddenly, a new alert sounded across the bridge. The sensor officer's hands flew across his console as he analyzed the readings. "Captain, the Vexar flagship is attempting something new. They're trying to synchronize their quantum states. I think they're attempting to create a controlled collapse of the probability field." The captain's mind raced through options. This was the moment that would prove whether humanity's greatest achievement was enough to defeat an enemy that had conquered thousands of worlds. "Engineering, can we increase power to the quantum cascade?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tension. The chief engineer's response came back quick and confident. "Already on it, Captain. We're routing power from non-essential systems. We can give them one final push, show them exactly why you don't mess with human ingenuity." The Schrödinger's quantum systems hummed with power as they prepared for one last attack. The ship's hull began to glow with an otherworldly light, existing in so many states at once that it looked like a constellation had taken ship form. "All hands, brace for maximum quantum cascade," the captain announced shipwide. "Let's finish this fight and show these aliens why Earth isn't just another world for their collection." The crew worked their stations with determined precision, knowing that this moment would be remembered in human history forever. They had taken humanity's greatest scientific achievement and turned it into a weapon that even the mighty Vexar couldn't counter. "Quantum cascade at full power," reported the weapons officer. "Ready to fire on your command." The captain took one last look at the struggling alien fleet. In all their centuries of conquest, they had never faced anything like this. A species that could bend reality itself to defend their home. "Target their flagship," she ordered, her voice firm with determination. "Let's give them something to remember Earth by." The quantum cascade struck the Vexar flagship with devastating effect. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist around the massive alien vessel as it was caught in thousands of possible states at once. The bio-organic hull, designed to adapt to any threat, found itself trying to adapt to every possible outcome simultaneously. Direct hit, the weapons officer called out, his voice filled with triumph. Their flagship is caught in a complete quantum loop. They can't even maintain a single solid form anymore. Through the main viewport, the crew watched as the mighty Vexar flagship flickered between different states of existence. One moment it was there, the next it seemed to exist in a dozen different positions at once, its hull shifting through impossible configurations as it tried to stabilize itself. Their entire command structure is collapsing, reported the communications officer. We're picking up emergency signals from every ship in their fleet. They're actually calling for a full retreat. The captain stood at her station, watching as the unthinkable happened. The Vexar fleet, terror of 1,000 worlds, was running away. Their remaining ships, those that could still control their drives, were turning away from Earth as fast as their engines could carry them. Back at Earth Command, celebrations had already begun. The Admiral watched the tactical displays with pride as the alien fleet scattered. "Send word to all Earth defense stations," she ordered. "The Vexar threat has been neutralized. Humanity stands free." In the Schrödinger's engine room, the chief engineer finally allowed himself to relax slightly. "Quantum drive holding steady," he reported. "We've done it. We've actually done it. The theories were right. We changed the rules of space combat forever." On the bridge, the crew maintained their professional composure, but grins were breaking out across every face. The tactical officer couldn't contain his enthusiasm as he reported. They're heading for the outer system at maximum speed. Those ships that can still move are practically falling over themselves to get away. "Their final transmission is coming through," the communications officer announced. "The universal translator is processing it now." The message that played across the bridge was unlike anything the Vexar had ever sent before. Gone was the arrogance, the certainty of their superiority. Instead, there was something new in their tone: respect. "People of Earth," the alien voice rumbled, "you have done the impossible. You have shown us that there are still mysteries in this galaxy we do not understand. Remember this day, not as the day you defeated us, but as the day you proved yourselves worthy of the stars." As the message ended, the captain looked around at her crew. Every person on the bridge had given everything they had to this moment. They had taken humanity's greatest scientific achievement and turned it into a shield for their entire world. "Send a message to Earth Command," she ordered. "Tell them the Schrödinger is ready for her next mission. Something tells me this is just the beginning." The first officer nodded, a thoughtful look on his face. "The quantum drive, the cascade weapon, we've changed everything. No one will look at Earth the same way again." In orbit around their home planet, the crew of humanity's first quantum battleship watched as the last traces of the Vexar fleet disappeared into deep space. They had done more than win a battle. They had shown the galaxy that humanity was ready to take its place among the stars. The quantum drive hummed softly through the ship, a reminder that what had started as a theoretical physics experiment had become humanity's greatest defense. The Schrödinger had lived up to its name, proving that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't the ability to destroy, but the ability to exist in infinite possibilities at once. As celebration messages poured in from Earth below, the captain made a simple entry in her log. "Today, humanity proved that the power of human imagination and scientific achievement can overcome any obstacle. The stars are no longer our limit, they're our destiny."